අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Monday the 19th of June 2023. Deflate inflation. Sri Lanka's acting finance minister is confident that Sri Lanka's inflation rate will drop to single digits by end of June. Cash influx. The World Bank confirms likely approval on a $700 million infusion to cash-strapped Sri Lanka. UK deals. The British government gives access for Sri Lanka to enter a development scheme with favourable taxes and tariffs for trading.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Acting Minister of Finance Shahan Semasinghe reiterates that inflation will be brought down to a single-digit value by the end of the second quarter. During a media briefing at the President's Media Division, the acting Finance Minister went on to confirm that the people will benefit by the reduction of policy interest rates, emphasizing on small and medium enterprise owners. He also went on to say that markets will be brought back to normal within a time period not exceeding 2 months.
පළවෙනි කාර්තුව දිහා බැලුවොත් එහෙම ආනයනය 28ක් පෙර වර්ෂයට සාපේක්ෂව අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අපේ අපනයන වලටත් බලපෑමක් ඇති වෙලා. පළවෙනි කාර්තුව තුල 9%ක අඩුවීමක් අපනයන තුල තියෙනවා. සංචාරක ව්‍යාපාරයේ ආදායම අපිට පළවෙනි කාර්තුවෙදී ඉහළ ගිහිලා තියෙනවා. 17%ක් 2022 අවුරුද්දට සාපේක්ෂව. විදේශ ප්‍රේෂණ ප්‍රමාණය අපේ ඉහළ ගිහිලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අපේ විදේශීය සංචිත ප්‍රමාණය මේ වෙනකොට ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියන 3.2 දක්වා වැඩිවීමක් සිදු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොලි අනුපාතය අඩු කිරීමත් සමගම ඒ මොහොතේම ඒ අඩුවීම ජනතාව වෙත ගමන් කිරීම සිදු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට කිසියම් කාල පරිච්ඡේදයක් බැංකු වලින් තමන්ගේ ගනුදෙනුකරුවන්ට ලබා දෙන්න කටයුතු කරાવી. දැන් ක්‍රමානුකූලව මේ පොලි අනුපාතයන් වල අඩුවීමක් සිදු වෙනවා. මම හිතන්නේ ඒක ඉතාම වැදගත් වෙයි. අපේ රටේ සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ ව්‍යාපාරිකයන්ට තමන්ගේ ව්‍යාපාර පවත්වාගෙන යන්න. උද්දමනය 2022 සැප්තැම්බර් මාසේ 70%ක් දක්වා ඉහළ නැංගුණා. මැයි මාසේ වෙද්දී උද්දමනය 125 දක්වා අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. අනික් පැත්තෙන් අපේ පුරෝකතන තිබ්බේ අපේ උද්දමනය 4 වෙනි කාර්තුවට යද්දී තනි ඉලක්කමක අගයක් බවට පත් වෙයි කියලා. හැබැයි අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා දැනට තියෙන පුරෝකතන අනුව දෙවනි කාර්තුව අවසන් වුණාට පස්සේ අපිට පුළුවන් වේවි තනි ඉලක්කමක අගයක් දක්වා උද්දමනය අඩු කරගන්න. උද්දමනය පල්ලෙහාට යන වේගෙටම බාණ්ඩ මිල පල්ලෙහාට ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ. මේක තමයි ජනතාව තුළ තියෙන මැසිවි. මේ තත්වය දවසෙන් දෙකෙන් සතියෙන් දෙකෙන් निराකරණය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ හින්දා අපේ වෙළඳපොළ සාමාන්‍ය තත්වයට පැමිණීමට තව මාස දෙකක විතර කාලයක් ගත වේවි.
The World Bank is likely to approve funding worth $700 million to Sri Lanka as budgetary and welfare support. Reuters quoting World Bank sources stated this is the biggest funding tranche for Sri Lanka since the IMF bailout was agreed upon in March. The first tranche of $250 million is likely to be disbursed immediately after board approval on the 28th of June.
The World Bank is likely to approve $700 million in budgetary and welfare support for Sri Lanka at its next board meeting on the 28th of June. Sources told Reuters that $500 million of the proposed World Bank funding will be for budgetary support and is likely to come in 2 tranches of $250 million each. Reuters quoting sources stated that the first tranche is likely to be disbursed immediately after board approval, with the next possibly in October, as the bank observes the progress of Sri Lanka's debt restructuring and the first review of the IMF program due in September. Reuters further stated that the remaining $200 million will be earmarked for programs to assist the poor, whose numbers have doubled to 25% of the population due to the economic crisis last year. This is reportedly the biggest funding tranche disbursed to Sri Lanka since an IMF bailout of $2.9 billion, which was approved in March this year.
The Department of Immigration and Immigration says that a total of 3,265 passport applications have been received thus far through the newly launched online passport application system. The new system was ceremonially launched at the Homagama Divisional Secretariat on the 15th of June under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Minister of Public Security Derana English, in a bid to provide the public with the opportunity to obtain passports more easily. Under the new system, the new passports will be delivered to the applicant's residence within a span of 3 days under this new procedure. Accordingly, the accepting of online applications for passports had commenced at 51 divisional secretariats across the island so far. However, the one-day service of issuing passports at the Department of Immigration and Immigration is continuing to operate as usual. Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, while expressing his ideas on securing EPF and ETF, insisted that SJB will align with the government only if they are on the correct path. Meanwhile, the Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that it is essential for all parties to unite together prior to the upcoming election and construct an alliance.
මම රජයට යෝජනා කරනවා මෙන්න මෙහෙම දෙයක්. කලබලයට කියපු කොන්දේසි වලට අත් දෙකෙන්ම අත්උස්සලා එකඟුණු තත්වයක් තුල දැන්වත් කලබලකාරී තීන්දුව තීරණ ගන්නෙ නැතුව විපක්ෂයත් රජයත් අපි සියලු දෙනාම එක හඬින් IMF එකට පුළුවන් නම් කියන්න නෑ මේ දේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීමට අපේ තදබල විරෝධයක් තිබෙනවා. මේක තමයි 225 දෙනාගේම එක හඬ. එහෙම කිව්වොත් අපිට පුළුවන් බොහොම පැහැදිලි බලපෑමක් ඇති කරලා අපේ EPF එක ETF එක රැකගැනීමේ ක්‍රමවේදයකට ඉදිරියට යන්න. අපිට පුළුවන් හරි දෙයට රජයක් නෙවෙයි ඕන කෙනෙක් එක්ක එකට හිට ගන්න. වැරදි දෙයට අපි හිට ගන්නට එන්නේ නැහැ.
අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙන්න ඕන. පක්ෂ පාට ભેදකින් ඉඳලා වැඩක් නැහැ. දැන් ලොකුවට එහෙම පක්ෂ කියලාත් නැහැනේ. හැමෝම දැන් එක වගේනේ 150කට වැඩිය තාම තීන්දුව කරලා නැහැ. කාට දෙන්න කියලා ගොඩක් වෙලාවට දැන් කැමති වුණත් අකමැති වුණත් මේක හදන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා තමයි කියලා විශ්වාසය ඇති වෙමින් යනවා.
අපිට ඉතුමත් එක්ක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. අපරන් නායකයානේ. අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. ඉතුමත් එක්ක ඉන්න කණ්ඩායමත් එක්ක ඉතුමාට ගමනක් නැහැ. එච්චරයි මට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ.
පළාත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ නාම යෝජනා දීලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි මම දන්න විදියට පක්ෂ හැම එකක්ම දැන් ඉල්ලන්නේ නාම යෝජනා අහෝසි කරන්න කියලා. අහෝසි කරලා නැවත කැඳවන්න කියලා. අපිට පේනවා ඊළඟ මැතිවරණයේ පේන්නේ පළවෙනි ජාතික මැතිවරණයේ ජනාධිපතිවරණ. ලබන අවුරුද්දේ නොවැම්බර් මාසෙ. ඊට පස්සේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු මැතිවරණය. මම නම් විශ්වාස කරනවා ඊළඟ ජාතික මැතිවරණය වෙන විට පොදු ජන පෙරමුණ එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂය අපිත් එක්ක එකට සංධානගත වෙලා ඉන්න අනිත් සහෝදර දේශපාලන පක්ෂ එකතු වෙලා මේ රටේ යථාර්ථය අවබෝධ කරගෙන අවශ්‍ය පුළුල්ම දේශපාලන සංවිධානය නිර්මාණය කිරීමත් අපි ආරම්භ කළ යුතුයි.
Bus drivers of private buses which function in 4 routes engaged in a strike action today, causing an inconvenience to passengers beginning this morning. The strike action was in protest of the decision to deploy a luxury bus on the route which runs from Piliyandala to Petta through Kottava and Borella. However, the chairman of the Western Province Road Passenger Transport Authority reiterated that the luxury bus will not halt its operations.
Bus drivers of private buses that are functioning on 4 routes engaged in a strike action in protest of the decision to deploy a luxury bus on the route from Piliyandala to Petta through Kottava and Borella. Bus drivers of the private buses functioning on the Kottava-Mount Lavinia route, Kottava-Borella route, Polgas-Ovida-Piliyandala route and Kottava-Piliyandala route engaged in a strike disrupting traffic on those routes. According to the bus drivers, they had not been informed of the deployment of luxury buses, adding that they will continue to carry out strike actions until they are presented with a solution which addresses their concerns. As a result of the strike action, school children and other passengers were inconvenienced due to the situation since morning. When questioned about the strike action, Chairman of the Western Province Road Passenger Transport Authority, Prasanna Sanjeeva, confirmed that the luxury bus will not halt operations. He further went on to say that the luxury bus started operations in order to provide a high quality of service to passengers. Although the luxury bus was not operational today due to the strike action of private bus drivers, the chairman confirmed that the bus will be functioning from tomorrow onwards.
A person was reportedly injured after a shooting by two gunmen who fled the scene in Kolonava last night. Meanwhile, in Calonia, a group of unidentified individuals had attacked a residence belonging to State Minister of Small and Medium Enterprises Development, Prasanna Ranavira, causing some damage. With that, let's take a look at other developments around the island in brief.
A 41-year-old individual was injured in a shooting in Kolonava last night. Two unknown people who approached the injured on a bike had reportedly shot him and fled the scene. The injured 41-year-old is receiving treatment at the National Hospital in Colombo. According to the police, the motive of the gunman is yet to be uncovered. Meanwhile, in Calonia, a group of unidentified individuals have reportedly attacked a residence belonging to State Minister of Small and Medium Enterprises Development, Prasanna Ranavira, around 11 p.m. last night. It was reported that only a domestic worker had been at the residence during the time of the attack. The unidentified individuals have allegedly damaged doors and windows of the house. In the meantime, an individual illegally producing alcohol on a large scale was apprehended by the police. The individual had allegedly been engaged in the illicit production of spirit in the Kudaudu area in Moragahena. On the same note, 5 suspects who had reportedly been maintaining an illicit liquor distillery in Ratnapura were arrested by the Kahabatta police. The suspects had been running illicit distillery for a considerable time period within cover of a forest. Meanwhile, 3 suspects were apprehended by the Amelibitiya police after unearthing 1,227 kilograms of cannabis from a 2-story house today. This is believed to be the largest stock of cannabis seized during a single operation.
We'll be back after this short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින් වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින් අබාස් මිලගණන් දැවැන්ත ලෙස අඩු කළා TV, ෆ්‍රිජ්, AC, වොෂින් මැෂින්, ලැප්ටොප්, ජංගම දුරකථන මුළුතැන්ගේ උපකරණ ඇතුළු නිෂ්පාදන රැසක් අඩුම මිලට අබාස් වෙතින් පමණයි.
ඒත්‍රිත්වයේ තහවුරු කළ විශිෂ්ටත්වය දුෂ්‍යන්ත මහබදුගේ චරිත දිසානායක සමිතරත් නායක සිසිජී නුගේගොඩ ගම්පහ
Physics නිලන්ත ජයසූරිය නවපන්ති ආරම්භය සුසිපුවන් ගම්පහ සීලින් බෙන් නුගේගොඩ සයන්ස් සෙන්ටර් ගාල්ල
පහනුවර කුරුණෑගල කෑකල්ල අංකකේ භෞතික විද්‍යා පාඨමාලාව නුගේගොඩද අතික්‍රමණය කළ වගයි ෆිසික්ස් දර්ශන ඔකුවෙල
තනිව යන ගමනට නිවැරදි ගිණුම් කරන මග හේමාල් පෙරේරා.
Welcome back in more news. Submarine of the Indian Navy INS Vagir called at the port of Colombo today. During its stay in the country, crew members and personnel of the Sri Lankan Navy are to engage in several programs, including an awareness program, and also visit various tourist attractions in the country.
A submarine of the Indian Navy, the INS Vagir, called at the port of Colombo on a formal visit today. The Sri Lankan Navy welcomed the visiting submarine with a customary naval salutation. The 67.5-meter-long INS Vagir, with a crew of 60, is commanded by Commander Divaka. A group of personnel from the Sri Lankan Navy is expected to visit the submarine to take part in an awareness program on its operational features. Further, the crew of the submarine is scheduled to take part in several activities organized by the Sri Lankan Navy during their stay in the country. This will be carried out with a view to promote cooperation between both naval forces. Meanwhile, the crew is also expected to visit some of the tourist attractions in the country. Concluding the visit, the INS Vagir will depart the island on the 22nd of June. Meanwhile, Tippu Sultan, the Pakistani naval ship, also arrived at the port of Colombo yesterday on a 2-day visit. The arrival of the 134.1-meter-long warship, manned by a crew of 168 persons, marks the first visit to Colombo by a submarine since a Chinese submarine docked in 2014.
In business news, the United Kingdom's Developing Countries Trade Scheme, which is offered to 65 countries including Sri Lanka, comes into effect from today. The British High Commission in Colombo said this scheme will replace the current GSP and allow Sri Lanka to trade with the UK tariff-free on 92% of goods, leading to increased competitiveness of Sri Lankan products in the UK market. British High Commissioner in Colombo, Sarah Holton, confirmed that the UK government hopes that Sri Lankan exporters will be able to broaden their opportunities with the UK by making use of the wider number of products for which tariffs have been removed.
The United Kingdom implemented the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, which is a leading preferential trading scheme in the world, with effect from today. According to the British High Commission in Colombo, Sri Lanka is one of 65 countries benefiting from this scheme that provides tariff reductions and simpler terms of trade. The British High Commission stated that this scheme will replace the current generalised scheme of preferences and allow Sri Lanka to trade with the UK tariff-free on 92% of goods, leading to increased competitiveness of Sri Lankan products in the UK market. The High Commission noted that customs processes will remain same under the current trade arrangements, however more generous and simplified tariffs will be applied. Further, the High Commission highlighted that this trade scheme will increase the potential for supply chain development as it allows more flexible rules of origin for least developed countries to trade with Sri Lanka without losing the tariff-free status. The trade scheme will also provide larger opportunities for Sri Lankan products in the UK market, since Sri Lanka is well positioned to supply sustainable, fair trade and healthier products. The British High Commissioner in Colombo, Sarah Holton, stated that the Developing Countries Trading Scheme is a tangible example of the UK's commitment to growing free and fair trade with countries like Sri Lanka, boosting economies and supporting jobs.
The Colombo Bourse closed lower today, hurt by losses in the financials and industrial sector stocks. The CSE All Share Index closed at 9,181.22 rupees, down 0.73%. Today, falling the most since May 29th. Expo Lanka Holdings and LOLC Finance were the top losers on the index, falling 1.7% and 1.8% respectively. Meanwhile, trading volume fell to 29.9 million shares from 55.4 million in the previous session. The equity market's turnover fell to 580 million rupees from 1.88 billion rupees in the previous session. Capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover today, while the material sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers in the equity market, offloading stocks worth 40.5 million rupees of shares, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 552.2 million rupees on a net basis. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Global oil prices fell following concerns over China's economy outweighed OPEC Plus outputs and the seventh straight drop in the number of oil and gas rigs operating in the United States.
Brent crude futures were down 0.2% at $76.44 a barrel, while the US West Texas Intermediate crude was down 0.4% at $71.47. Contracts ended last week with gains of more than 2%. The Chinese property market has not recovered from last year's slump, and in May, both retail sales and industrial output came in below expectation. China's refinery, however, rose in May to its second highest total on record, helping to boost last week's gains. And US energy firms cut the number of working oil and natural gas rigs for a seventh week in a row for the first time since July 2020. The oil and gas rig count, an early indicator of future output, fell by 8 to 687 in the week to June 16th for its lowest total since April 22. Rising Iranian oil exports also weighed on prices. Iran's exports and oil outputs have hit record highs in 2023 despite US sanctions. The OPEC and allies, including Russia this month, agreed on a new oil out deal, and the group's biggest producer, Saudi Arabia, also pledged to make a deep cut its output in July.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.
News and information you can trust 24 hours a day. Visit AdaDerana.lk.